Guys, welcome to the First Responder Playbook. I'm excited. I've got Phil Whitebloom with me tonight. Phil has a long career in business. He's with over 40 years in sales and sales leadership. He's helped build businesses of all sizes, from startups to Fortune 100s, break through barriers and close with confidence. He spent most of his career in senior leadership and executive roles, including vice president of sales for Sony Electronics of America, where he was twice honored with the prestigious Samurai Award. He's led U.S. federal government sales organizations for multiple companies, served clients worldwide, and drove national growth across industries including corporate accounts, higher education, sports, houses of worship, and broadcast television. He's been consistently at the forefront of innovation, selling and leading through shifts like the introduction of word processors, the rise of network workstations, the transition from analog to digital, and the evolution from standard definition to HD and 4K. Today, through his firm Been There Consulting Services, Phil helps businesses and individuals implement tactical, real world strategies that deliver fast results, including how to open doors, ask high impact questions, advance opportunities, and close more sales. He's especially known for helping owners and salespeople build unshakable sales confidence, a key contributor to breakthrough performance. His coaching isn't based on theory, it's grounded in what works now. Phil, I'm excited to have you. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here and be here with this platform and with your particular audience. It's much different than where I usually show up, and it's like I love it. Even my wife said, she goes, "Oh, you're going to like this one because this is your thing." She told me.
Absolutely. So let me ask you, how did you get into sales, and how did you work your way up the corporate ladder?
So um, I went into sales directly out of college. So I was interviewing for jobs
Where'd you go to
at,
college at?
at the University of Wisconsin in Oshkosh.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, and I still go back there. This will be my 20th year of going back and guest teaching and speaking and things like that.
That's
So
awesome.
in the
I
fall,
love
yeah.
that.
So whenever you're watching that, it's in the fall when I usually go back. So anybody's
Yep.
listening, you're watching your podcast here. Um, and my first job was in sales, and it was selling something called dictation equipment
Okay.
for the younger people. They have no idea what I'm talking about. For those who've been around, they'll know. And um, and then it went from there. So I was, as you had mentioned in my introduction, it was a very nice introduction. Thank you. Um, I was uh, I was around for a lot of disrupting technologies, and disrupting technologies, in my definition here, are technologies that change the way things are done, and people were always worried about it was going to replace their jobs. Everything is now, it's like AI now. It's all going to replace our jobs. And guess what? The people that want to move and learn more, they're always going to do well. And there's always jobs for everybody. You just have to move with the technology because, um, and whatever way things are going. So you just look for, okay, what could I do in this area? How could I be valuable? And most of the time, when you have a technology change or some kind of major change like that, it actually frees resources up, in this case people, to do things that were not getting done before because they didn't have the time. Now this new thing allows them to have the time, so now companies move them into those roles. So
Yeah,
there's always a
absolutely.
positive way to look at things. You could panic and overreact, but as first responders, I'm sure that all of you who are listening in will know that the worst thing that could happen is when you let somebody panic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people get freaked out by technology when they should look a lot of times as it is. It's more just helping them be more efficient than taking their jobs.
Could be right, or it could be literally replacing their function, but that doesn't mean they're going to have to be gone.
Yep.
And even in my early career, I was laid off. When I first showed up at Sony within the first year, but I never left. I had my papers. I never left because I found another role inside the company, and that set up my entire rest of my career. That change was almost singularly responsible for what happened over the next almost 40 years.
Awesome. Can you talk about that?
So, I didn't really work for that many companies, even though I
Hmm.
was in the corporate world. I started in 1980, and and I actually retired officially from the corporate world during COVID, and that lasted all of about 2 months. and I started this coaching business to help people out, just to give me something to do, keep me stimulated, and things like that, and help others. And it turned into a business by accident. And all of a sudden, I had clients, and I had to develop a business. But in between there, um, it was really a great role. I was fortunate that I was promoted to a sales management role when I was in my early 30s. So, and now I'm 67,
Yeah.
and so that was a long time ago. But during that time, I worked with some excellent people, and and almost all of them were really good, and I learned a lot from them. And for the few that were not that great, I learned a lot from them too. And so, but I was able to participate with so many different applications, and so many different markets, and it's almost like you name something, and I could honestly name um, an application, a customer, whatever. If you want to talk about first responders, and things, everybody from all branches of federal law enforcement for sure. And then I was also responsible for state and local governments, and I had salespeople all over the place. So it wasn't me, by myself. There's a whole team plus all the support people, and everything from Law Enforcement Videographers Association, which are the folks that put their lives on the line, going in, putting surveillance devices, let's call it, for bad people, and it's not an
Right.
easy thing or a safe thing to be doing, but they do it for our benefit. All the way to 9/11 was an incredibly terrible time, and many first responders were killed, and um, my team and myself and Sony did an excellent job. I mean, like, just dropped all the bureaucracy and did everything can in New York, in real time for a very long time, to take care of everything, especially the fire marshals and the fire department there, and the FBI and others. So um, then there was also things that were not quite as dramatic, that were, but helping National Institutes of Health with technology to help them find cures for diseases and all kinds of things out there. There's all kinds of stuff going on there. Supported the White House from Ronald Reagan through Barack Obama, and that was and every military action we were part of, and things at the Smithsonian, and things with very cool things with pharmaceutical companies, and bringing them new technologies to help them sell their products, and all kinds of stuff. So we can go on and on and on. And I've said very few specifics, only because we lack for time, and I don't want to put your audience to sleep.
Yeah. So what, in your opinion, is, I mean, almost 40 something years, what what do you think was the most impactful technology change during your time?
Well, certainly going into chips. Now that goes way back when, there were tubes in cameras and video
Mhm.
cameras and things like that. And so that brought on the ability to miniaturize and improve things. That was probably the foundation for everything else that came behind. Um, and uh, as the quality improved, it's always, they'd say, like with high definition. Well, we would never use high definition for news, and why would news ever need high definition? Well, now news you could do in 4K, right? Because it's always that. But the miniaturization of everything was really dramatic, and then all the analog shifting to digital, and there we go from there. Especially with film cameras going to digital cameras, I was part of that entire transition. And I mean, there were organizations and agencies that said, we'll never get away from film, never, ever, ever. And that didn't, that didn't
I
last.
I remember when that transition started to happen, because that was right around the time I graduated high school, started going to college, and I remember growing up, like, we would carry those, cheap disposable cameras you'd get at Walmart and take them,
Yeah,
get them developed,
yeah,
and then it seemed like within a couple years, those were gone, and all you were doing was, digital cameras,
right,
and
right. Well,
I
you had to get for the quality to get there.
yeah.
So it's amazing. There used to be a thing called broadcast quality. It was and if it wasn't broadcast quality, then there was no way a television station was ever going to air that. And especially at Sony, who was all about the quality at the highest level, there were such high standards to meet. And then during the first Iraq War, when all of a sudden cell phone video started showing up from the war zones, and that kind of video quality would have never been aired before that. But now this was real world news coming in real time over the cellular network, and it was getting aired, and that changed everything from an information communication standpoint. And all of a sudden, it wasn't broadcast quality wasn't as important, was good enough, which was something that was tough for some of us to adjust to. Hearing that it's good enough. And then also cost is always an issue, and that technology was way less expensive to run. And the ability for redundancy and things like that were really important were now available. And as it all moved into the same thing as the IT world, it kind of merged, just different applications. So I hope I answered your question.
Oh yeah,
But
you definitely did, and I love that because I remember that that's definitely like my generation of when things started to change,
yeah,
and I very vividly remember that.
yeah. But it was a
Um,
game changer. I have to tell you, one time during President Bush one, during his term, the Emperor of Japan had died. And so he was going to the funeral. And when the president travels, at least in my days of doing this, the advance team would go out ahead, and they would go take pictures, film pictures of everything, the routes and everything else. And then it was like television. They would put it on a plane with an agent, and they'd fly it back to Washington or someplace secure. And then they developed a film, and they would analyze everything, and they would plan out the routes and everything, all this kind of stuff. And then we come out with this technology. It wasn't even digital, it was analog, and it was a spinning disc called Mavica that would go into this filmless camera. And for the first time, you could do nonlinear type of work in a photographic camera. So what we did is we set up, we sent the agents out with this camera from the advanced team, and then they put it in. We set up the transmission system, which worked at 2400 baud. You guys could Google that or do an AI search and learn what that means if you don't know. And but it was super high speed at the time, and right now you would throw your system away instantaneously. But they would put it in there, and then they transmitted that information back from the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo back to the advanced team office and the White House property. And they were overnight, they were able to get the pictures back without having to put somebody on a plane. It was the first time that had ever been done, and it really changed on how they did these things. And it was secure because it went over secure phone lines. They put it into their secure phone line systems. So it was a pretty game-changing kind of time.
yeah,
So
I didn't know that. That's awesome.
yeah, no, nobody really does. And there's a bigger part of there's a longer part of that story, which is kind of funny but we won't go in there because
I can always have you back for part two.
yeah, you go.
So tell me, how did you get into the coaching space? Um, Especially in sales, I can see the benefit of it, but how did that come about for you?
So somewhat accidentally, I would love to tell you I had this big plan and I implemented this plan, and here we are today with all the things going on, which I could share with you guys if you're interested. But as I started my LLC, my limited liability company, in 2021, but I didn't. It wasn't focused. I just had it, and so I started doing some contract work during COVID at this time, and I took on a contract with a company based in Israel because they couldn't get into the United States, and I was in their technology space. So for 1 year, I had a contract, and when the contract ended, I didn't continue with them. But that's when I just retired. And so when I was sitting around and I was talking to people, and they were talking about what would help and talked about sales coaching, and they thought that was a great idea. So it was a bad time to really launch into something around Thanksgiving and in December because there's just way too much going on. So I really got it going in January, almost the first days of January 2023, when I joined the Chamber of Commerce and introduced myself. And I got 2 signed clients introducing myself. And then I decided I have to start a business because I didn't have anything going. And now there's all kinds of things that I've done and I'm doing and transitioning into. Um, but that's how I got into it. It was really, and for a second, I'd like to just share with everybody that this is not sales training, and I'm very intentional about this. And I tell everybody that sales training is really important. And across the country and across the world, there's so many great trainers out there, and there's so many great programs that you get in person or online. And but what I do is I help people in need right now. And I don't want to go as far as saying I'm a first responder for companies that are having sales problems, but it's not a bad analogy. I just don't want to diminish the role of a first responder. So I won't go there all the way, but it is a kind of a good analogy where I go in and help them because they're in business now. They need results now. And training is very linear. You start at the beginning, how to get in the door, how to do these things, and all the way through to how to close and hopefully how to retain customers and clients. But that doesn't mean you're going to help them with what they're working on now because they're going to be all over the place. They're in business now. They have their challenges either as a whole and they're not driving sales like they need to and they have to and they want to, or they're stuck with not being able to do something well in the sales process. And Brent, one of the things I hear more often than anything, my people are not good closers, or I am not a good closer. And the reality is the closing's not happening. It's not because they're bad closers. It's because the customers, the prospects, are not ready to be closed yet. They haven't done all the right things in the middle. And so when I go in there, I purposely do not have a curriculum because every job is custom based on what their needs are. And then I eventually coach myself out of work, either because it worked or it didn't. Most of them work. So,
Right.
so how'd I do?
I love that. And can you kind of touch on, because I feel like especially in the middle part of the country, coaching is new. I actually just got my coaching certification, and I'm working towards my ICF certification. And I come out there and I interact with these people, and they don't know what coaching is. Can you kind of explain from your point of view, especially coming from a consulting training background, the differentiation there?
So, coaching is first you have to have expertise in what you're coaching on. It's not like buying a franchise per se, and then in a field that you didn't know anything about, and you learn, and the franchise corporation trains you and everything else like that. But when you're coaching, these people are expecting you to know what you're talking about and from experience, right? And it's not about the book stuff. The book stuff is important to a point, but it really is about active listening and then giving them real world solutions that's going to help. And active listening is not a cliche, and how to ask high impact questions, and it's all about helping them. So for all of you who are listening to this podcast, and if I'm to ask you right now to say out loud, why did you choose to be a first responder? And I could hear the majority of you say, to help others. So sales is all about helping others. Coaching is all about helping others. You already have the most important thing going for you is that you are passionate and sincere and have already given of yourself to help others. And that's what coaching is about. It's about helping them to get better. You think of a sports coach is a great analogy. Sport coach is not out there to yell at people for the sake of yelling at them. They're pushing them to do better, and you have to win. And when you're coaching somebody, you have to win. So it's about really listening. When you go out on your first responder call and you're with somebody who's hurt or there's something wrong, even though you could maybe be able to see them bleeding or have something broken or whatever it is, you're still asking them, What's going on? What are you hurt? What's, tell me what happened. If they could communicate what's going on. If they can't communicate, you're doing all this stuff to try and find out what's going on. It's the same thing you do as a coach. You have to find out what's going on before you could help them. You can't just walk in there and say, oh, I see what's going on. Well, you have no idea. You don't even know. For example, when I was doing a coaching session for believe it or not, a plumbing company with all the plumbers, because they have to sell. They have competition. They give quotes. They have to close them. And, one person was up like this. And if you're not watching us in video and audio, I've got my hands folded across my chest. And I said, you have to read the body language. And that's a very defensive thing, although you can't make that assumption. So I turned to the person and I asked her, I said, am I talking about something that's making you uncomfortable, or are you not agreeing with it and you're unhappy, or are you just cold? She goes, I'm freezing. And I said, see, so you couldn't make a decision. You couldn't assume because her arms were crossed that she was in a defensive mode. She was cold. And it was
Yep.
cold in there. So, that's what you have to do in coaching. The first thing is find out what's going on and what the desired result is supposed to be.
Well, I think you hit on something very important is that when you're coaching someone, one, you absolutely have to be an active listener, and that is something paramount that we can use in the first responder world. I mean, that's 95% of our job is listening to what's these people in their time of need. They want somebody to listen to them, but what you really need to realize is don't go in there and just listen to what they're saying. Watch their body language. A lot of times people will tell you something and there will be more meaning in that story that they tell you. And you got to pay attention to those little bit of clues. So I think absolutely is just hammering home the importance of active listening to first responders. But I also really love the fact that as a supervisor, uh, there is a very good implementation of coaching ideals, I think, to your people beneath you. Because what are the two things that affect everything? Your life and your career. And a lot of times in the first responder world, we're told, hey, kind of check your life at the door, come to work, do your job, and go home. And to be honest with you, that's not a fair thing to happen because it doesn't matter how much you check it at the door, your life's still going to affect your job, and vice versa. If your job's bothering you, it's going to affect you at home. And those supervisors and first responder agencies are the perfect person to be these coaches, be it career coaches and life coaches kind of combined. Because, hey, where do you want to be 6 months from now? How do you want to get there? Where do you want to be 3 years from now? And it's helping them build out that plan of success in their career because you got to think. I mean, your first few years, especially being a cop, and I'm sure it's the same in being a medic and firefighter. You just want to go fast and do fun stuff. At the end of the day, I mean, you really do. But after that, you kind of hit that wall of, well, what do I do now? Like how do I grow myself? And some guys will just stay there because they don't want to, rock the boat or jump over that wall. And I think like coaching programs could very help with that because these people don't have that guidance to take that next step. Does that make sense?
Yes, and there's so many layers to this, and I've lived it myself. I was never exposed to entrepreneurship. I was always in the corporate world, and I share with my friends and with my wife. We're just talking about this and said, I've learned as much in the last 2.5 years as I did in the 40 plus years prior. But it was the experiences the 40 years earlier that allowed me to get to the point where I'm learning all these new things and totally energized at my age and how many years I've been in. I mean, I'm fully gung ho. And the thing that everybody needs to remember is that it is also a business and there's so much to running the business and everything else. And that's the part that can be overwhelming. And it's really good to, I always say, never hire a coach that doesn't have a coach. I have a coach and I pay my coach a lot of money and I learn from my coach and it's reading all the books and I do audio books and constantly, and then get out there and get the experience, because um, you have to do all the business stuff too to have it running correctly and everything else. And so you really need to know what's going on. But you could be a coach in different ways. You could be an entrepreneurial coach like I am. I'm, self-employed, building my own business. I have a team that I put around me, and adding to that team. Um, or you could be a coach going to work for another company that specializes in placing these people. For people in the first responder world, unfortunately, there's a huge need for you in the private sector. And let me just say, the private sector is anybody that you're going to work for, um, from that's not getting a government check of some kind.
Right.
And um, because everybody needs religious organizations. We have security all the time. Who would have thought it, that we have to have armed guards in our religious organizations, right? It's a
Yep.
it's a terrible shame. Explain to the kids why there's law enforcement in there, walking around in the hallways,
Yep.
and so, and what's going on in the corporate world. I mean, look, at the time of this recording, just look what happened out west with the ambush on the firefighters. I
Yes.
mean, it's like, it doesn't get any crazier than that. So,
Yep.
so there's a real need for executives and businesses, as well as not for profits and everybody else, to get quality consulting and coaching from those who have been there. And uh, and those people are really listened to, and they're very well respected. I always tell people that 99% of the people in the world are really good people. It's just that the 1% of the bad people make 99% of the news. And
Yes.
um, and it's the same thing, with first responders and law enforcement too. When you have a bad officer, well, then it makes it look like everybody's bad, and it was one out of a million. So not 900,000 out of a million. It was one. It's just all over the news worldwide, so instantaneously.
Yep.
So what I say is, I always like giving takeaways, something to help. That's my promise to everybody when we talk and when we meet. And for this is, think about where your passion is. Think about what it is. If you close your eyes and you say, this is what I really would love to do as a coach or whatever you're going to do, don't start thinking about all the things that won't, that'll prevent you from doing that. Just answer that question. And then it's about finding who could help you to get there. Notice I didn't say how to do it.
Yep.
It's really about the who's. And there's a great book out there. Everybody's called Who Not How. Download it, buy it, whatever. It's a fantastic book, because so many people are hung up on the how, and it's really who could help you get there. And for those people who say, hey, you can't do this, or you'll never make any money at it, or why would you do that? Why would you take on all that stress? Those people are not helping you. Okay. You say to them, you are my family. You are not helping me. I know you're trying to protect me because you love me. However, I will see you on the holidays. I'm going to go find somebody who's going to help me to reach this dream. And
Yep.
that's what we do in sales. That's what I coach everybody on. And that's what we do when we're helping others, is to achieve things that are very difficult for them to achieve for whatever the reason. And all of you have plenty to give in that area.
Absolutely. I want to get your thoughts on how we can implement coaching in leadership levels. You know, because I feel like a lot of times, especially in the first responder world, and I'm sure it happens in the business world too, is sometimes people get moved up the ladder, not because of what they know, it's because they've been there the longest. And I want to get pick your brain for a second, see what your thoughts are on implementing coaching ideas into like leadership circles.
So, Brent, could we do a role play?
Yeah, absolutely.
We do a role play? Okay. So, the reason I say this is that it's not just leadership roles, it's any role. The most important thing before we jump into the role play is that the leader has to be willing to accept coaching and want to do better and everything else. And there are plenty of people out there who are looking for that help, because one thing with leadership, for all of you who are in leadership or have been there in the past or thinking about it, it's lonely. It's not a cliche, because who could you talk to? You can't talk to your team because they're the ones they're expecting you to make these decisions. You need to get input from your team, but when you need to bounce something off, or you need to make a tough decision, you need to lay people off, you may need to fire somebody, you may need to reassign, restructure, and things that are going on. And you have to, who do you talk to? Right? How do you adjust? The world is changing for all of us. I just heard a thing this morning. I was watching something on stoics, being stoic, and the stoics, and it was a great thing. One of the ancients said, "You never twice step into the same river." And when you think about that, it was saying, even if you stepped in, stepped out, and then stepped immediately back in, you're stepping into a different river, because all that water and everything that was flowing is already gone by. And
Yep.
it's the same thing that happens. All this planning and everything is great until it's not. And usually when you get on scene, right? Oh, we got this
Yep.
great plan. We go in and it's like, oh my God, nothing's laid up like the playbook said. And then you got to, you know, trust your gut, take your experience, and go do things, right? So same thing with this. So if we role play for a second, and I'll be a salesperson selling coaching for leadership, and you'll be the prospect, the customer.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to walk in, and you know why I'm there, so we don't have to get through the whole thing where I'm going to talk my way. You know why I'm there, and everything else we're talking, and watch what happens. And let's say you're a little bit skeptical just in the nearby, but you're open-minded enough. So, okay, here we go, Brent. So you're still Brent, I'm still Phil, and you're leading a organization, first responder organization, whatever it is you want to do, and say, hey, Brent, um, really thrilled that you agreed to meet with me today. And let me ask you right up front here is, what are your expectations for this meeting? What are you hoping to gain? And if it's, say, to get me out of here as fast as possible, that's okay too.
Right. It's to take new ideas and implement them in my organization.
Okay. Okay. But I imagine you've been doing that all along though, right? Tell me about your some new ideas for things that you have successfully implemented.
We got new body cameras at our agency, and we got new tasers at our agency.
Yeah. And then was that a successful implementation?
Yes.
And what made it successful?
They work. No issues with them. The employees like they're easy to use. So I feel like so
So
far they're working good.
So what role of that did you play in that as a leader, as opposed to just something that showed up and they tech guys made sure it was all working and hooked it up to everybody? So what, as a leader, what was your role in that whole process?
Help picking out, the right technology for the agency overall.
Right. Okay. And how do you feel about that program overall?
So like so far it's going well.
Right.
It's always kind of nerve-wracking because it's a big purchase.
Yeah.
But so far so good.
Good. So there's a lot of things you did right, correct?
Yep. Yes.
So, right. So now there's all kinds of decisions that you have to make and everything else. Share a story with me. Maybe it's one you're working on right now where you're struggling, or things aren't going as well as you wanted, or you're even struggling making a decision, whatever it is. I don't want to put all these ideas in your head, but share with me, something that isn't going as smoothly, or you're concerned about not going as smoothly as that one we just discussed.
Making sure that we have enough manpower out on the streets.
Okay. And so that seems like such an obvious, easy one in some ways.
Yeah.
Obviously it's not. What is the challenge there for you? And what is the challenge for you as a leader in this one?
Um, Obviously there's a lot of negative publicity these days about law enforcement. So recruitment in general, and then to keep the employees is the retention is tough. Um, Competing with the private sector in pay, and just burnout in general. Those are the main ones that we deal with.
Okay. And So this is a real live situation you're dealing with today. Is safe to say?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So great. And so if we were working together, and I say if, um, what would you? How could I help you the best? And what would that mean to you?
Help me manage my time. Help me, make sure to go through a smooth decision making process, stuff like that.
Okay. And in what's impacting your time now, and where do you think the process needs improvement?
Just everything. I mean, with trying to retain your employees and recruit new employees, plus, upgrading the technology all at once is a lot of time that takes up your day. And then, there's everything else that goes along with running the agency. And so maybe like start delegating some of those tasks out instead of just handling it all, in just my office. Would be maybe be a start.
Okay. And then when that's all working for you, what will it look like? How will you feel? You know, what will allow you to do next? That's really important to you. Did we get lost? Oh, you're on mute.
Weird.
There you go.
Awesome. Technology. We're
Yeah,
back.
there you go. There you go. So, by the way, I was just giving you the winning lottery numbers, and I'm sorry you couldn't hear them. So they've already gone on. So, anyways, could you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. So I was just asking, when all that's working.
Working.
Oh, you
Can you
have a
hear
little
me?
audio problem.
Audio problem.
Uh,
Okay, that's better. Could you still hear me? Okay, I can't hear you, but I can see your lips moving. Oh, I hear something.
Hear me now.
There you go.
Awesome. I don't know what's going on. Gotta love
All
technology.
right. All right. So it's good. What did you hear last?
Uh, was basically, what all I could do to like help manage my time a little bit better.
Okay. And then, and then so we would take that further on, and when we get to, so we're going to go through some of the things and say, okay, so Brent, how would you like to get started working with me? What would work best for you? Did you want to have a detailed meeting, that we could schedule either I actually have some time tomorrow or early next week? What would work best for you?
Um, Probably early next week.
Okay, great. So let's come out of the role play.
Yep.
What did you like?
You actually were very personable about it. That's what I really took away from it, is that it didn't feel like you were pressuring me to like go in any direction. It was more of like, I'm here to help.
Right. And this is a real question, okay? And I'm not suggesting that you're going to hire me right now,
Right.
or maybe ever. But what I'm saying is, if you were looking for somebody to be your leadership slash sales coach, would you consider me?
Yeah.
And why?
Because you made a connection, you made that rapport with me pretty quickly.
Right. And now I want you to think about this. And for everybody who's listening, what did I tell you? How much did I talk? What did I tell you?
It was mostly questioning.
I didn't tell you a thing, but you're
Yeah.
willing to hire me. You've already grown trust and everything else. This is what I coach, and this is amazing. And I ask people questions for 30 or more minutes, and especially other salespeople and business leaders, and they say, "Well, I don't want to sound that salesy," or because for you guys. And by the way, ladies, I call everybody a guy. My dog would be a guy. Everybody's a guy. So um, um, that the that it's about the asking the questions, and by asking you'll learn. And see, here you were ready to bring me on board. You're willing to do that right now. And how much do you know about me, other than what you read in the intro? But how much did you learn from me in this? Nothing. I didn't say a word. I just asked you the questions, and then we would get into it a little bit more about some ideas on the things I could do, because now I understand where your issue is to a point. And then, because I asked all these questions, and I asked you what was called high impact questions. So a high impact. So I'm sure in first responder training and stuff, they talk about don't ask yes, no questions, closed-ended questions, because they don't tell you anything. That's right.
Right.
Like, you ask 10 people, do you like my shirt? Or, everybody who likes my shirt, raise your hand, say yes. Everybody who doesn't like my shirt, raise your hand, say no. And no matter how you answer, it doesn't tell me a thing or anybody else. Right. It's like if I say, tell me what you like best about my shirt. And then if I come back and say, tell me what you would change if you could change something about my shirt. I didn't say tell me what you don't like, because people remember negative things. But if you say then they do it in a positive way, now you're learning about it. So when I asked you a couple of questions, I asked you a question, I said, and then tell me why you answered that way. That's a high impact question now. And a high impact question. So now you've got an open-ended question where they're telling you more, but then they're going to explain more about it. And then you may ask a deeper question beyond that. And these are the skills that you as first responders already have. You just don't know it. And that's one of the things I love about what I do with coaching, is because my thing is I learn what's really works best for everybody I talk with, and I leverage that. I don't focus on what you don't do well. I mean, if there's something that's blatant, then you go ahead and you fix that thing. But you focus on everybody's strengths and you build on those strengths. And people respond very positively to that, as opposed to somebody who's always telling them what's wrong with them. And nobody likes being around those people.
Right.
And right, nobody. And you're not going to want that, especially if you're a leader and you have an ego, and if you're worried about your job because you live in a political type of environment. Doesn't have to be in political life to be in politics. Believe me, I was in plenty in the corporate world. But you stay focused on those you're trying to help, and that is, you have that skill. And I'll tell you, the biggest thing is that if you're going to go in for your business for yourself, get help, because there's a lot to it, even from all kinds of stuff, from invoicing, bookkeeping. I'm not scaring anybody away here. I am telling you, I named my company Been There Consulting Services for a reason. And I've been there through a lot of stuff, and I'm still going through it, and through a lot of great stuff. And but I also learned, and I made some pretty significant financial bad decisions during my growth period here.
Yep.
And it could be done. And so that's my spiel there, Brent. What else could how could I help you? What else could I do?
I love that. Well, as we wrap up, where can people reach out to you at, and where can they get your book at?
Okay. Well, thank you for asking. So they can reach out to me at my website. You can hit me on the Contact Us page. It's Been There, all one word, BEENTHERECS, Charlie Sierra, or consulting services. So BeenThereCS.com, and you go right there, or you could send me an email directly. Please just go right ahead and send it to Phil@BeenThereCS.com. I'd love to hear from you. Put something in the subject line to say, hey, I heard you on the First Responder Playbook with
Yep.
Brent. And that's the best way. And I respond. And my book is Handling Objections, Clues for Closing the Sale, and it's doing great. And this is on Amazon. So you could just put in Handling Objections and Clues for Closing the Sale. You'll see, if you're looking at it on video, this is what it looks like. And I really do appreciate you doing that. And this really helps a lot, way beyond business. And I say that because of the things people call me with. Everybody, even from somebody who was going through a terrible divorce, and she said, Phil, your book helped me get through my divorce. And it was like, who would have thought when I put this book together that was going to be one of the applications? But when you're dealing with people and how to head off objections before they happen, it's called pre-handling. Big deal. And it really is powerful.
Well, I'm going to put a link to both of them once the episode's live. Okay. I will put it in the episode description as well, so that way everybody can find it.
Yeah.
Phil, it's been my pleasure tonight. Thank you so much for joining me, and you're always welcome back, okay?
Oh yeah, thank you. It was an honor, and I can't believe how fast the time went by. It was. I really appreciate you asking me to be here, and thank you to everyone for your service. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too.